Good morning to you, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. This is day 3 of our global virtual gathering here from the center of the Pacific, Maui, Hawaii. Session 1 of the final day from now 10 a.m. here in Hawaii to about noon. And then again, the second session of this final day 3 of the World Dharma Global Virtual Gathering. Taking it higher, another phrase that I've been using quite frequently, is liberating freedom. And a synonym for that is what I've used over the last few months, especially called the nibbanification of shared space. I'm going to get into that more today. So thank you from my heart for tuning in. I hope you're feeling good in your body and your minds. It's a challenging time, needless to say, and state the obvious. And my intention of sitting here with you and in my own mind and body is to deliver on the promise of what I call my Dhamma or my Dharma. And I've talked a lot about this over the decades, and especially these last 3 days. The word Dhamma to me means a multiplicity of things, but in essence, in short here, before we get into this first topic that's really important to share, Dhamma. It means 2 things as I understand it, to keep it very, very simple. The experiential, as we oxygenate the mind and body through air, Dhamma is the experiential oxygenation of beautiful states of consciousness. We'll get into the details of the beautification of consciousness. On the other hand, the second dimension of Dhamma is the radical, I use the word radically rarely, the incisive, immediate, urgent, breathtaking, holistic intimacy of present time presence to see truthfully that which conflates or conflicts or creates suffering inside of self and or in other. What are those states of mind that create what's known as dukkha, the Buddhist Pali word that means self-generated conflict, struggle, and suffering? It was what attracted me to the teachings of the Buddha as I understood them as a young man. I had everything, a home, an education, a partner, and life, and wealth, and study, and poetry, and music, and dance, and sex, and masturbation, and the classic cliche of the 60s, it wasn't enough. It didn't address interiority in any intimate, wise way where I had more responsible control of navigating my own happiness or my own pain. And it transcended psychotherapy. It transcended the psychedelic. It came only into resolution with the word Dhamma or Dharma. The ancient Sanskrit word, I think the oldest word on the planet that I know of. Freedom, as Isaiah Berlin said, negative freedom, freedom from fear, freedom from greed, and freedom from delusion. Pause. When I use the word freedom from, I don't mean an absolute black or white, an either or. Yesterday we introduced the concept introduced to me by my late teacher, the Venerable Sayadaw U Pandita, that Aung San Suu Kyi and I talked about in our book, The Voice of Hope, in 1995, quivering. The emotionality of quivering at the confluence of consciousness with a state of mind. Quivering with compassion, rather than I'm compassionate versus when I'm not compassionate. Authenticity with quivering to be more dignified, conscious, natural, uncontrived. Authenticity isn't a state. Learning how to be malleable, vulnerable, fluid, non-idealistic. So, to recap Dhamma, overcoming conflict found within 3 states of mind, SOMs. greed, anger, and delusion. There are thousands of antonyms and synonyms for those three root words known in the Buddhist Pali language as Lobha, Dosa, and Moha. I wish I had more time to talk about them. So Dhamma on the one hand, as Isaiah Berlin talked about, the overcoming of these three, or the challenging of these three states of consciousness. You can have all that you want in the world without the freedom from fear, greed, and delusion. You are bound in a type of satanic, blissful hell with stuff, which is of course okay until it disappears, like the people in a tsunami, or in Burma, where you stand up for freedom and democracy and you're shot dead through the center of your head, or you're raped, or if you're a woman. We live in the forces of evil, interior evil. I'm not to demonize it. Greed, anger, and delusion. To study those states of consciousness is one of the greatest things that you can give our life in our friendships. And on the opposite side of things is the beautification of consciousness. What are they? The opposite of greed. Who could ever talk enough about generosity? Yesterday I mentioned the word generosity as a young man in a monastery where I was unable to feed myself, answer the call of nature. I went there to meditate, to become enlightened. I fell gravely ill, almost died. And if it wasn't for the hands and the hearts of other people who sat and lived with me 24 hours a day for nearly 8 months, who answered the call of nature for me, who showered me, bathed me, fed me, I would not have survived. This incredibly intimate interdependence known as dana, natural giving to support the nature of your own well-being. The opposite of greed, generosity. The opposite of anger, what is it? Love. The opposite of delusion, wisdom. Dhamma. Experiential Dhamma, a word that I've used very frequently that I cannot stop using. Dhamma literacy. Take it out of the holy, the nuministic, the existential, the spiritual, the orthodox, the traditional, the systems, the guru, the teachers, the teachings. We learn languages, we become more literate. Dhamma today, it can be unplugged from orthodoxy, tradition, gurus, systems, teachers. There are transformational wisdoms, nuggets, world Dharma 3.0, states of mind. Dhamma or Dharma literacy, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Let me invite you, what are the states of consciousness that you consider to be things that you want to know and to overcome? And what are the states of mind that you call beautiful, that you want to evolve and elevate? Experiential, overcoming, engaging. And the other point before we close is the contraband, the diabolical joy, the challenge to be true to yourself. We tend to be mesmerized by charisma. We tend to be mesmerized by power, by looks, by wealth, by status, by culture, by political propaganda, spiritual propaganda, historical propaganda. The Dhamma, to me, in one of the most attractive qualities about it, is that it was presented with the word ehipassiko, wupanaiko. What does it mean? Come and see for yourself the truth of something, and only from that deep, empirical, experiential application of present time consciousness within the context of one's own inner being at the confluence of the senses, that deep interiority, you for yourself, breathing. No one's breathing for us, obviously. No one can do our Dharma for us. Self-responsibility is the bedrock of individual uniqueness. Pause. Responsibility, deep experiential nature. What is uniqueness? Uncontrived naturalness. I ask you, what is the state of mind of authenticity coupled with dignity, with spontaneity, with your own unique sense, the way you dress, eat, touch, love, kiss, your own style. Don't lose style. Embody style, embody class, stand up, sit up, pause. When I was in Burma during those years, researching my books with my colleague Fergus Harlow, Burma's Voices of Freedom, we interviewed over 200 former political prisoners. Where do you find the grace and the courage and the patience to keep embodying your Dharma under these most horrific, torturous conditions? Classic line for Dharma. Although they imprison our body, they cannot imprison our mind. We've got an echoing, brilliant teaching coming out of the prison gulags of the world. Are you willing to overcome every vestige of shadow and victim to stand in the fidelity of the word? My life is a magical expression of liberating freedom. No one can take my dignity, my conscience, my freedom unless I give it to them. So style, they often talk to me about style and keeping alive individual uniqueness within the framework of the Dhamma. How do you breathe in dignity, they would say. How well you breathe in dignity could be the very psychological, emotional means of survival when you're being tortured. Okay. Conscience, dignity, style, aesthetics, overcoming conflict, elevating beauty. As we breathe on our own, over and over again, done by ourselves in a shared atmosphere, the Dhamma is being done by ourselves, continually done in our own unique style, to allow us to animate. It isn't just to do Dharma as I see it, but to allow us the grace of life. Okay, pause before we get into the writing exercise. What is life? For God's sake, I don't know, but we're embodied. Do you feel it? Look at our hands. We talked about it for 2 days now. If for some act of miraculous, strange karma, I lost access to my hands and I couldn't touch myself, my body, or life. Imagine. And all of a sudden, by the grace of God and karma, they came back. What would our Dharma mean to us by simply, oh my God, acknowledging the innateness? We often think in developmental strategies, but I want to really point to innateness. We talk about mortality, here-nowness, innateness, the spontaneity of innateness that honors the sacredness of existence, the spontaneity of honoring the sacredness of existence. Are you there with me? If we all knew that we would die today, what would we do with the preciousness of a full breath? Okay? No cliche intended. Young Greta Thunberg, September 19th, 2019, told 193 ambassadors to the United Nations, broadcast around the world, I want no more of your phantasmagorical fantasies of endless economic growth. We're headed to the brick wall of self-annihilation in an extinction. This isn't fear-mongering. You and your economic policies are bullshit. I want to live. People are dying. Ecosystems are collapsing. That's the great mother that we're on. And then we're embedded in our own biological mortality. In-breath, out-breath. The Dhamma is immediate. How well do you occupy innateness? The way you see, the way you hear, the way you smell, the way you touch. One last little story. When I was in Bali, I was living in my little villa, doing my low dosing, meditating, writing, creating poetry, thinking, feeling, crying, doing my usual gig. My friend, my partner at the time, brought in a man, Wayan. And she asked if I would stay with him for the day. I never saw him before. And she told me privately that Wayan was blind. And I'd never hung out with anyone blind. And so Wayan and I were hanging out all of a sudden, and I realized, looking at his eyes, he couldn't see me. And he asked me, I hear that you live in nature. Would you tell me what you see? I'm talking about innateness. I don't know about you, but even as a meditator or a yogi, whatever we do, it's easy to go from here to there and miss the points in between. It's cliched. I know the journey is more important than the destination. How many times do we need to hear that shit? until there's a sacred intervention. You've had a stroke, you've had a heart attack. Something's happened to interrupt the normalcy of the high degrees of mediocrity that we call our spiritual dimension. Until you're cut right back to the moment and you go, holy fuck, right? Imagine right now that we knew that we're at the precipice of a great extinction where all life on Mother Earth would be annihilated. Your own lover, your own body, your own mind. What do you see right now in your own heart that's most important for you to bring forth? How well do you perceive the context? Look around the room and look at your fellow brothers and sisters. How well do you feel the moment of seeing? What do you see, Alan? I've never seen nature. I could go on and on about this story. What do you like most about what you see and feel in your home? I went around the house during that day and talked to him about the intimacies of my perception of what was being seen and felt in my home. At the end of the day, you can go where you want with the story. At the end of the day, he asked me, I'd like to remember you. Would you tell me what you look like? And that was a very vulnerable question because I don't really look at myself except incessantly. And I don't really know what I see except either what I see or what I project or what I hope to see or what I don't like seeing. But really to really own and naturalize, embody, I know this is very Oshoian and very cliched on a certain level, but for God's sake, you know. He was asking not what I looked like, he was asking for a memory of intimacy as I heard it. And therein lies, as I looked in the attic as my parents died, and I was the one who volunteered to clean out the memorabilia of 96 years of their lives. Going through photographs and dresses, perfumes, all the various things. A life in the dimensions of how we accumulate the memories of day-to-day life. And all of a sudden, a lifetime is gone. Let me invite you as we proceed down this day to increase the fidelity of our non-blindness by seeing more intimately who we're with, who we're doing, what we're doing with. And to sensitize and to take the speed out of our Dharma. Just so rare to just go into that holy engagement of the word feeling. When people ask me the essence of Dhamma, to feel the nature of that which is present truly and learn from it to either let it go or to evolve it. So from my heart to you, thank you for tuning in today. The next aspect of this first session this morning, if you want to write things down, you're more than welcome to do it. This is a writing exercise that we talked about yesterday. And I'm very fond of it because it's really about self-therapy, mind mapping. Let me just give a short introduction to this. When I came back to the West, having been told to depart from Burma by the dictator, I felt very devoid of intimacy, friendship, and tribe. My family was there. These are the people I abandoned. And so I began to see, as I began to teach and integrate at that time my relationships, how the cultural, political setting of the West was so radically different than the monastery, not just the East. People had a degree of intimacy that was very choreographed, that's very different than monastic life. We were told to take our watches off, not to look at clocks, to take time out of our psyche. In the West, things were very connected to time and the order, and very obedient to time and location, punctuality, all the various things that define Western culture. So people would say, oh, it's so great to see you. I'd love to get together. Great. I'm free right now. Well, let me check my address book, my engagement book. Oh, I've got coffee from 1 to 2:30 maybe next week. I'll catch you in Mill Valley. Hour-and-a-half segments. People were very connected to an unrecognizable, no judgment intended, an unrecognizable capitalistic blockchain. They were driven by the causality of money is time. Very rare would someone open up the space and drop the parameters of Western capitalism. I felt. I loathe it. I really, truly, I don't want to belong to the Tony Robbins club of making it work. I don't want to integrate. That's taken me a long time to want to be not only a rebel against it, I don't want to even fucking participate in it. It's not sacred to me. It's denigrating. It corrupts. It's corrosive. It creates bad habits, strange intimacies, and it works based upon a really well agreed upon set of indoctrinating principles. And if you don't belong to those principles, you're an outcast. And so, wow, that's really strange. And so I came back and I said, okay, great, blend in. And what happened, all the addictions that I left behind when I went to the monastery slowly began to resurface. It was a contextual adaptation to the speed and to the coerciveness of what looked to me to be intimacy in relationships. Okay? And just personal sharing, that's all. What happened was my Dharma became wrapped up in just a few people, that I could possibly survive the onslaught of reintegrating from Asia, monasticism, intensive meditation, not just Asia, but in the Western high-fidelity Dharma world. And so I compensated with addictions and numerous ongoing, endless 6 to 10-day retreats. I created monastic life in the West. As that continued, in between those events, to share very personal, I developed shadowy, darker habits that eventually led to a form of self-deception and hypocrisy where I no longer walked my talk. Okay. That's just a very open sharing, which isn't a great disclosure, but it's very important for me to see that a lot of the things that I idealize have only been idealizations without really dealing with the hypocrisies, self-deception as portal to self-love. I would ask a guru, a teacher in any role at all today who still dares to do that, Venerable Madame, do you feel ever now could lie to yourself? And you just watch the answers that you would get. They would twist it psychotherapeutically right back into some kind of, some teaching about you. What is it that you can't face in yourself? Sir, Madame, Lord Buddha, please talk to me about how to understand self-deception. If yogis and meditators really were no longer willing to collude with false idols, hierarchy, teachers and gurus, and it was really an even playing field of psychological, spiritual energy, we would share together. How do you lie to yourself? Do you live a double life, my friend? What are the joys of that double life? What do you mean by that? Why do you fly first class and always have oceanfront villas and claim that you live a simple life? Why do you seek donations when you got stock options in Facebook? Why do you lie like that and you live an elitist and you talk about the beauties of simplicity. How is it that you have a husband that acts out with students and you talk about the virtues of celibacy? These are just a few of the standards with regard to hypocrisy and self-deception. And I bring it up here because it was something that I had to face in my own life to begin to understand this writing exercise, which I'm going to dive into. My Dhamma, your Dharma, is wrapped up into just a few people, strangely. We talk about transformational wisdom, and by and large, where you play it out is 99% of the time with yourself. You can be a bodhisattva all you want and save all sentient beings, but most of the time you're talking to yourself, trying to save yourself. You talk about wanting to expand the world community and the network of intimacies, but at the end of the day, the beginning of the month, you're lucky to have more than a handful of people that you spend 99% of your time with. And most people, if they're so lucky, play out their spiritual lives with one other person. They might have big followings, but you don't get the truth of who they are in that big following. That woman or that man does. Okay? So it's like, wow, is it that simple? If I studied the nature of my relationships, you mean I would further my Dharma life far more than doing an intensive meditation retreat somewhere down the road? Yep. Yep. You would. I don't say neglect that, but let me point this out. And you can write this down if you find it interesting. The Bodhisattva in Buddhism is all about making relationship my ultimate object of reverence. My transformational growth takes place in context. Not many of us walk down the streets of Paia or Makawa or Pukalani and giving away cryptocurrency. Dollars, cars, homes, travel, vacations. Most of us fantasize about giving. Fantasize about love. Fantasize about compassion. Are you with me? I mean, you might play it out a little bit with your cat, your dog, your flowers, your lover, but very rarely do you really lay it out there in a big way as you would with your lover, with many people beyond that little small tribe. And generally speaking, beyond that intimate tribe, you act out to compensate what you don't do within your intimate circle, I find. It's really amazing to me to hang out with great teachers and to see how they behave when they're not with students. Horrible. Strange. But whoa. And that must be my inability to understand their depth. Self-collusion. Hitler arose because of collusion. Gurus exist because of collusion. All gurus are the same? Yep. It's over. It's over. It's over. It's over. And so this exercise to me is a very, very important one to really make it clear that it is over, that you are the angel of your own salvation. Take the pressure off yourself and stop projecting. Come home. Kalama Sutta. How many of you know that? The foundation of this writing exercise is the Kalama Sutta. Ehipasiko wupanaiko. Come and see for yourself the truth of the situation. Only by yourself can you free yourself. No one else can free your mind, right? Bob Marley, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I mean, I've got to really do this. Absolutely. I'm my own teacher. Guess what? Absolutely. I'm my own therapist. They're good ones, but you're the better one. You mean I'm going to really unshackle from those dynamics? Yep. Books too. Don't buy spiritual books. A moratorium on feeding yourself other people's insights. Stop listening to guided meditations. Done. Stop being a commodity for the commodification of things that don't really ultimately help. They pacify, make you smaller, diminish your stature, make you dependent. How many people I've fucking met who can't meditate without a guided meditation in their fucking app ear? Get over it. Drop it. Send them back to Silicon Valley. Autonomize. Revolutionize. How? Okay. The Kalama Sutta, so overlooked, so justifiably cliched, the Buddha was said to have said, because a group of people in Upper Kula were mystified by so many different teachers coming through the island of Maui, they didn't know who to fucking believe anymore. One teacher came in, they're all respected, but they all contradicted each other. And only those who were in positions of power and who were those independent brokers of bringing in teachers and gurus and various saints and savants could see the truth of the conflict that was arising based upon their goodwill. And then certain students began to talk, geez, Helen and G and God and Guru and Satan and the Dalai Lama, they're all groovy, but look at all the books on the wall and I'm fucking confused. I don't know what to fucking believe, right? I'm acting it out, right, on the stage of the Mac, okay? I'm acting it out, like what in the hell am I going to do? I'm on the streets of Wailuku wanting to do fentanyl when I should be meditating up in Kula. An extreme example, right? Hi, I'm a spiritual being, 45 years on the island. I've got a couple of tattoos that show that I've been in India. Who are your teachers? There's a carnage of them in the cemetery of hell. I'm now an independent. What do? I do acid. I do ayahuasca. I've been to Peru. I live in Ibiza. What else do you fucking do? How are you? I'm fucked. My spiritual development is completely dependent on my wife's love of me. I am who I am based upon the goodwill of another person. All the spiritual development, guess what? It worked, but it didn't. It's pretty much the Western model today. Really? The Kalama Sutta is a demand, a commandment to come home every step of the way so that we can truly, I feel, empower intimacy as vehicle of freedom. It's the study of projection, blame, righteousness, indignation, absconding from the elegance of self-responsibility. I'm not talking about radical autonomy. I'm talking something even more radical than autonomy. Be a citadel, right, of power and strength in yourself. Get a job, stand up straight, put on a suit, cut your hair, whatever you need to do. Embody the virtue of dignity and conscience over spiritual heightened states of consciousness. Drop enlightenment, embody conscience. How well do you walk? How well do you look? How well do you do the asana that you've done every damn hour of every damn month of your life? That level of dignity. So the foundation of this writing exercise is self-respect. Hard-earned truth. The Buddha was invited to the Kalama village in Upper Kula, and the headman said, "We are confused by the variety of teachings. Can you help us understand who to believe?" In short, no one. Not even me, he said, which is pretty cool. Okay, what's the trick here, dude? Where are you going to go with this? Don't believe anyone because they have large followings. Hello? Hello? Hear this one. Don't believe anyone because they have well-respected books, bestsellers. They're all written by ghostwriters, for God's sake. Get it? Okay? They don't even use teleprompters. They use notes. And other people write it. No one even knows that. Most teachers, you'll never know it. Their agents and their publishers don't know they hire ghostwriters. They're my thoughts, right, Perma children? You said that? Trungpa, Dalai Lama? They're written by other people. Joseph Biden's looking at a teleprompter. Hi, my name is Joseph Donald Trump. Oh no, I mean Biden. I'm the president of the Soviet Union. And I really would like to do drugs. I would like to do democracy, I mean. They're puppets of stupidity. Hello? We got culticized based upon not knowing where to go in life, based on capitalism and being disconnected, and the cultural propaganda of not belonging, the fear of love and intimacy. We weren't brought up knowing how to love well, what it meant to be in a marriage, what it meant to have as a family, what it meant to have as a job. We did not know that. I don't know about you, but I didn't. I didn't know what it meant to be moderate in substance use. I used a monastery as rehab. I'm a 70-year-old, 22-year-old in the developmental arc of a young adult, to be very frank. Hard-earned insight. The Kalama Sutta, don't believe because they've got large followings or best-selling books. Don't believe it even if they're poetic and charismatic. Oh, beloved. Oh, isn't he so loving? Oh, no, don't kiss my feet. Oh. I mean, really. Adults kissing the feet of someone? Hello? What were you brought up thinking? It would be great if they threw $1 million bill in your wallet and shared some of the loot they're stealing from you and fucking your partner's partner. Okay? Sorry to be so blunt about facts that are public. And they're across the board in the Buddhist, the Catholic, the Christian, the Muslim, the atheist traditions. Have you had enough yet? The Buddha's saying 2,600 years ago, guess what? It recycles every now and again, especially in Hawaii. The Kalama Sutta is the timeless teachings of don't be corrupted by the fraudulence of the other. There are legitimate others, and you already know them. We're going to get into them. And he goes down, even charisma and poetry, not to be mesmerized by the language and the form and the cadence and their Tai Chi moves and all the various things that they do, and their eloquence and that poise. Then who to believe? He said, under no circumstance. Even if it appeals to your reason and your intuition, don't trust it. Weigh it so dramatically against the conscience of your mindful intelligence, and even then don't trust it. Sustain a radical discernment of deep independent self-inquiry weighed against crises and challenge, and even then be very, very reluctant to embrace it. Is it really shadowed with projection and hope and desire? Do I know those states of mind? Stay autonomous, stay independent, stay discerning. Elie Wiesel, the great Nobel laureate, the Holocaust survivor. Stay away from women and men who offer absolute answers. Anyone who uses a capital T, a capital A capital E for enlightenment, like Guide to Enlightenment, guess what? It's pure poppycock. It's a makeup. It's a makeup. You got to get that. Really. He's so rad. He's so judgmental. That's collusion talking. I don't want to be myself. I want to be true. But what's true? And the Buddha said, what's true for you? Only under radical conditions of intimate discernment, self-inquiry, independent reasoning and thinking. Elie Wiesel said, under no circumstance be with those who offer absolute answers. There are only absolute questions. Question everything, young man. Question everything, young woman. Daw Aung San Suu Kyi paused. In Burma, they used the divine expression of revolutionary nonviolence, the power of the human voice rooted in dignity and conscience, using auditory vibration through speech and shared space as revolutionary transformational action. What did she do? They don't know what they're doing because they don't question themselves. Dictatorship, totalitarianism, the absence of inquiry on who I am, right? So the issue here is, how do I empower as vehicle the essence of the question? You staying with me? The root takeaway for me after 50 years of this Dharma story is self-honesty. I feel that there are so many people in positions of power and privilege and profit and poverty and struggle as well. But the greatest virtue, I think, among the Homo sapiens that we are, is self-honesty. There's something there that we abscond from in our culture. It's the greed at all costs, whatever's required to get to the end goal of the status of a home on the beach in Makawao or in McKenna, the yacht, the trophy husband, the 2, 3, 4, 5 heliport, whatever it is that is, oh cool, why don't you want all that too? Well, guess what? It just turns out that it's all run on the fentanyl of denial. It's called, because we're all consumers and driven by the fossil fuel, quote, homicidal economy, every one of us have our footsteps on denial. We're headed over the precipice. David Suzuki, I've said it so many times, the great environmentalist, we're headed for the brick wall of extinction. And we're in the car as a global family arguing over where to sit, what's on the radio, and which breath we're watching. What's our mantra? Om Namah Shivaya. Where am I in denial? Self-honesty is the opposite of denial. Pause, okay? Are you with me? Couldn't it rate the essence of meditation? Self-honesty. The essence of mindfulness? Self-honesty. The essence of intimacy? Self and other honesty. What can you do? I can't love you any more than we are honest together. Otherwise, we're living in a shared fiction. And we know where that castle falls. The evolution of the species, the planet, honesty. Xi Jinping of China, do you honestly know what you've done to the Uyghurs in your country? Do you know what you're doing to the 1.4 billion people in your country behind the firewall? Do you know what you've just done to the boys and girls in Hong Kong who are fighting for democracy and freedom of speech? Do you know, sir? Here, open your mouth. You do the ayahuasca. I'll sit with you as you purge your deception. Okay? This is a self-induced ayahuasca, this writing exercise. So I'm going to get into it. It's the last day. I won't be doing too many more rants like this in a while. The Mac is closed, or I would make you pay for the goddamn session. I'm just having some fun today before I go back into denial and fear. It's so simple. Who are the principal people in your life that really, really impact you? That's where your Dharma is played out. That's your Sangha. That's it. 99.9% of your Sangha is this list. Let me allow and support you in this listing. And it's on tape if you need to go back to it. Who are the principal intimates? Immediately you hear the word intimates as people that you really love. But that's not where you play out your Dharma. There are a lot of people who play out their Dharma by people who they don't like. The vilification of the masses, the collective. Forever wars, Mr. Biden. I make my money and my power and my privilege and my presidency based upon the fiction of killing enemies that aren't really enemies because we want to sell weapons. Okay, I'm just playing it out. So here we're dealing with principal intimates that have the most impact on us. Impact is a very important word. And there's no need to put them in hierarchical order. I speak more and relate more as collages, intersecting collages. You're making a mandala. This is who we are emotionally. I am as the result of these people. You take these people out of your life, and there's a radical collapse. I say this with humility. I've got a few good people left in my life, and a lot of really great people who I know. But I've lost 9 people in the last 4 years that are really foundational to my sanity. Mom and Dad, my teachers, my godmother, my 3 best male friends. You know, it goes on. My 3 aunts. But the 3 best male friends was just, and then my dad and then my teacher, 5, the principal men. Those of you who are women and men that know your tribe, I mean, that's a big one. You can't make good friends again. You can make friends, but you can't make old friends. And you go to get a text or you go to a phone call to process, they're not there. And I mean, I go to bed every day, I wake up every day now, and I don't want to moan about me, but I yearn to talk when I wish to talk and feel when I wish to talk and feel with someone who's there to talk and feel with me, quite frankly. And so I bring this up in terms of your mapping, your mandala. Do you have an impactful emotion with someone you yearn for? There are a lot of people I've met in the world over the years when I did kind of more group spaces where in time as I got to know her or him, it was who was missing in their mandala that defined most of their lives. We don't even know how we compensate for loneliness. And we project even in a teacher or a teaching or a book or a phantom. How many people watch porn? I don't, but there's a lot of people who live in the world of porn. What is the psychology of that? What is the psychology of projection? Absconding from self-respect, self-honesty, and self-love. The hardest thing for us as men is to respect and to love ourselves. Men rarely ever talk to each other in real ways. Rarely do they ever really do that in a sustained way. I don't know about women. I think you're more comfortable with each other, but how to be a respectful citizen within your sangha. How to be a soul brother and sister with those. So who are the ones in your life that impact you the most? You've got to include mom and dad, alive or dead. My mom and dad are more with me now. I know it's really cliche, but it's not. They're more with me in both an elegant and troublesome way. Because no matter how clean and connected you've been with people, it's just the human nature that it was never really enough. And it's not that you can go back and change it, because you can't. But how many people I know, really beautiful people, have ongoing marriages with people who've passed on? They're continuing to have psychic romances. Mom and dad. Who are the principal people that you really cherish? Your principal partner. Who's the number one man and woman in your life? Your lover, your best friend. I dare even bring up that's right. No one's going to read your list, by the way. How many men and women I have met over the 40 years of doing this exercise who have secret intimacies that not even they themselves are willing to admit very often, that so impact them that without her or him, I don't know that I could even keep together this constellation of otherness. Hey, honey, I love you, but guess what? I'm just going to keep lying to you about who really impacts me. So make sure that you've got that sacred self-deception door opening. Do you have any high impact people? Pause. How many men I've met? I'm not asking for names or photographs, who have sex worker relationships. How many Dharma teachers I know and have known who see sex workers? Even to the point them being married, their partner doesn't know. How many spiritual teachers do I know and have met who sell drugs to support their dana addiction? Because they like drugs. I mean, you cannot believe the back door What I'm pointing to here, if you have the courage, is bring a candle into the door and create a cathedral in that dungeon of denial and deception. Come out of shame, for God's sake, right? Let's introduce your sacred lover to you and keep him or her out of that shadow of being someone who just services the needs that you can't have met with your husband or your wife or your lover or your teacher. Okay? Another one that's high impact and very, very sensitive. Are you okay here?
Yeah.
It's too much?
No.
This is a hard-earned writing exercise, by the way. It'll save you a lot of money with therapy, with drugs, and teachers. A super one that's never talked about, except within the circles, like within the Osho community, is high impact fantasy. I've met so many couples that live in marriages where I imagine making love with you and you're someone else. I've had rooms filled with 20 to 30-year-old millennials in different places when I was more actively engaged in groups, and they're radically open. Really radically open. The women especially. And how often men will not admit that they fuck out of habit. They do to you what they want to be done to them and have no real intimate regard for what really turns you on. Habit sex. Habit self-sex. High impact masturbatory impact. Let me write it down for you. You mean I'm going to unpack the images that I bring to my masturbatory fantasies? Yes. If you can't do that, what are you doing? I say, bring mindful consciousness to these things. Take demon and weirdness and politics out of it. Hey, if you need to do that, namaste. Do it with honor. Do it with grace. Do it with delight. And I would only encourage you, we're going to get into this, slow it down. Slow it all. Feel it. Feel. What does Tantra even mean? The tantrification, the nibbanification, the beautification of the illicit. If you do cocaine, you do phenol, you do whatever you do. Like the blind man in Bali. When you look in the mirror, would you tell me what you see? How many people I have met in texts and in circles in Asia where teachers there, Kalyanamitas, do not encourage them to go to a meditation retreat. Which is really interesting because in Asian cultures, where I've been, it's very rare to find someone who has the time to leave their work. Really, really rare. It's like considered the rarest of things in the world to have 10 days or a month or 2 months off to come to a meditation retreat. I lived in a meditation center in Burma. I've been in and out of it for 43 years. We'd have up to 10,000 people. 90% of them were lay men and women. And I knew the language well enough to talk in English as well as Burmese. And I got to know a lot of them and know their histories, their backgrounds. Most of them said this is the first and the last time they'll ever come to a meditation center because of obligations to the family and to the village. Whoa, right? Sacred engagement. My point here is sanctify, revere, elevate. Let's stop calling this holiness, the Dalai Lama. Call your masturbatory fantasies your holiness. Call your sex worker your holiness. Call your fear your holiness. Call your mother and father that died, that you're still processing in therapy, your holiness. And bring more intimacy there. Bring more consciousness there. Bring more self-respect there. Treat them as the only way in which you'll ever find your heart is through these sacred, impactful relationships. This is your Dharma. This is your Sangha. Buddhang saranang gacchami, blah, 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 right? I take refuge in the Buddha called me. Awakening to the Dhamma of my interiority in my Sangha of high impact connections. The Sangha isn't everyone who does Vipassana, everyone who does Allah, everyone who does, Patanjali. The Sangha is this mandala that you're mapping. Who are these boys and girls that are alive, that have deceased? Now another one. So we've done some provocative ones, right? I hope you're remembering these and right. Remember, don't show this list to anyone. Don't sell it. Don't show it. Don't leave it out for someone to read. Don't have it as a vehicle to induce even more shame. Therefore, you can blame me for having done it. Keep it sacred, keep it protected, and keep it close to your heart. Another one that's very important to me, and then we're going to pause and do some questions and come around. Enemy. I don't know about you. It just takes a diagnosis of a fatal illness to realize who doesn't like you. They're the ones who don't text, don't comment, don't write, don't even put a heart on something beautiful that says something. They're not there. There are people who don't like you. It just comes with the territory, the more honest you are. I don't know about you. The more honest you are, Gandhi, killed. I'm not putting myself in the company of Gandhi. Martin Luther King, killed. Okay? Robert Kennedy, John Kennedy, killed. Was it Socrates? He said, fuck you. I'm going to kill myself. But what I'm saying here is the more we stand in high impact study of heart in context to these relationships, the more you become truly, I think, holy, saintly, reverential, and radical. You look at the qualities of people that we admire, they've got radical self-confidence, rooted in deep respect for the ecosystem of emotionality and psychology and spirituality. They're embodied. So, enemy. May I invite you to pause for a couple of seconds here? And I'm not saying people who just don't like us. Where do you have kind of conflict? Where do you have unresolved? I'm not saying you're going to go back here and work it out. I'm just saying, how can we untether, decathex, to use a psychological term, overcome the collusion with the habit of, what's that word for disconnect? These artifices, these unrecognized patterns of psychological, call it disconnect, dislike, or even anger, I think keep us very tethered to an orbiting identity that's very limited. And I'm going to get into how we can transform the enemy. Who are the people in your life that are nemesis? Anyone in this room who really has a person that they don't like or that doesn't like them? There's got to be at least 5 in your life. Just put up a big note on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. Who among you don't like me? And you'll know the ones that don't respond. And then say, I'm going to take you off the list if you're not honest about not liking me. And then you know you shouldn't have them as friends on Facebook. Then you can put them on this list. The Buddha was said to have a man in his life called Devadatta. Do you know Devadatta? He was the Buddha's nemesis. It's a classic story, but he was a competitor. He was a rival. He had that competitive edge of competition with the man. Those of us in more of a public life or a broadcast life men get competition based. They're all groovy as long as you share the rewards. But as soon as they see a little outing to go a little bit above you, it's like, hey, oh no, he's untrained. He's just a loud mouth. He's crass. Uses forward. I knew him back in the day. All ways in which we denigrate, keep small, right? Enemy, nemesis. The Buddha had a Devadatta in his life who actually went from rival to trying to attempt to kill him. He was an assassin. It's pretty radical. It happens, right? It really, really happens all the time. And to make a long story short, which is very interesting, we'll pause here. Devadatta, in his attempts, he failed, but he was successful in creating enough controversy at the time of the Buddha, it said in the text, that he divided what's known as the Sangha and created contempt for those who followed the Buddha based upon those who came to him. He was so eloquent in his ability to communicate. He was really an extraordinary speaker and also a great manipulator. And it's said that when he died, a number of nuns and monks celebrated his death. And it's like right now, you see on Facebook people celebrating Donald Rumsfeld's death. Oh. War criminal. It's kind of, look at the amount of derangement syndrome that went down around Donald Trump. It was amazing to me how many enlightened teachers hated him. But it was justifiable that you're allowed to have a scapegoat like that. But no one really talked about, wow, that's really interesting that you are so rabid in your dislike for someone you've never met. And that you love everyone else. You teach metta as a day-to-day way of being. It's a blindness, right? So the Devadatta syndrome is very interesting, how we hold in contempt certain people without even knowing it. It may not be that you have enemies, but it may be that you're an enemy of yourself. Justifiable discord is what rules the world in politics. Holding high people in high esteem and or in high disregard could be put on this list. We're looking at your samsaric sangha, your own mapping, your own mandala. Enemy. The Buddha was said when Devadatta died, no, not to celebrate that. This man, over many lifetimes, was the gentleman who helped me to understand the power of love. Only from the challenge at the most extreme levels was I able to do a reversal, a Katie Byron that's been taken from the Buddhist tradition of a reversal. How is this impacting me? Ask yourself the question. I know he is trying to harm me. How am I harming myself by not assuming responsibility of learning and growing from this? That's the Buddhist Bodhisattva model. It could be even seen as spiritual self-abuse if you're not really careful. The Buddha said, this gentleman has been the greatest gift in my development of metta. Without an adversary, it's very hard to really find a heightened sense of completion with love, which is pretty rad, really rad. And even went on to say, to close the story, that Devadatta in a future lifetime will in fact become a Buddha. You don't know who your enemy is to be your saint, right? We're all in this together. We all talk about coming home together, right? I'm saying here, let's walk the walk. Enough pointing out the shallowness of other people, right? Let's walk the walk. What I'm saying here is, decathex from the outside, know who your tribe is, write them down. Mom and dad, sister, brother, daughter, son, grandchildren, you have to include them in the constellation of our hope and love. Enemy, masturbatory fantasies, secret relationships, secret relationships, secret relationships, secret relationships. One more time. Secret relationships. One more time. S-E-C-R-E-T. Secret relationships. Only you're going to read them. And those who are not your mom and dad who have died or deceased. And equally someone, this is the last point here, whom you wish to meet that you don't know yet. How many people I've met, and I could be one of them at times, where my life is defined by the girl I haven't met. I walk around and live in sacred celibate denial, waiting for someone that's never going to be there. Do you really mean that? I'm so utterly convinced that my thinking is so appropriate that I'm going to keep that sacred secret of denial to meet the person I want to meet that I'll never meet. Okay? Where do you empower that sacred unknown? You have to put a slot there that puts an X, unknown intimacies into the future. Many, many, many people live in the compartmentalization, stating the obvious, of a denied loneliness based upon a fantasy of hope. I'm saying excavate, elevate, integrate. Become the saintly lover of your own life. That is so cliched, right? But don't negate it. Go there. Deliver on that promise. Okay, so that's the first part of this writing exercise. Do you have any questions about the list itself? And then I'll get into the last part. And if you have to use the washroom, it's in that room over there. Anything about the list at all? About the people, the principle list? This is our samsaric sangha. This is our own personal mandala. This is where we develop and transform or negate our Dharma life. You have to include on that list teacher. Many people include on that list teachers who they no longer respect, but they're still in deep configuration, if you will, with that teacher they no longer like. They define themselves by what they're not anymore. We want to decathex and remove the gravitational forces that bind us to limiting identities. It's all primarily interior in context of just a few people. And you'll see as this list refines, most of our Dharma is really coming back to you on you. How well do you on you? And then how well do you do you with a significant other? Usually it's one other person, or if you're in a family, there's 3 or 4. You don't necessarily have to live together, but your Dharma, 99% of it, is with a couple of people. If you study those relationships really well, and you empower those relationships as saintly, as transformational, your guru, your teacher, your system, your own Kalyanamitta, you have gotten it. Those relationships are your power, your strength, and your salvation. That's my experience. I'd advocate that much more so, or alongside of the traditional transformational practices and trainings. You can't say enough about the importance of meditation. But meditation isn't a sitting posture or a walking posture. It's an interrelated intimacy of wise connectivity. I'm looking at you, I am meditating. What does that mean? Rebirthing, bhavana, parami, ubuntification, nibbanification, the transformation of shared space. Wow. So when I go to the kitchen and I see my husband or my wife, you are with the Buddha. If you don't go there and you're waiting to go play ping pong with yourself somewhere in the denial of your own dungeon, you've got to include ping pong and denial in dungeon as a principal intimate and understand that. Rather than pretending to be in an intimate relationship with your wife or your husband. You're in an intimate relationship with ping pong in the denial of your dungeon. And you've got to stop marginalizing it, Alan, that it's not ping pong and it's not a dungeon. I'm tired of being afraid of myself. Right? I have every right in the world to make love in the way that I want. I don't need to go to Canggu and do a Neo-Tantra workshop in order to love. I don't say that there isn't wisdom in those things, but for God's sake, one of the beauties of lovemaking is it's unique to every individual all along the way, every way in which it's done. Empower the process of intimacy over what it looks like, especially what it doesn't look like. A lot of what's going down in our lives is what we don't do well enough. Deficit dharma. Deficit psychology. You don't come to a therapist by feeling good. There's always an issue. In monasteries, it's often about the success of something, the beauty of something, the higher altitude of something. They rise up in mutual resonance together. No overcoming of darkness by studying darkness between petals. Flowers open based on deep nurturing. What is your water? What is your soil? What are your nutrients? What is your light? The next phase of the writing exercises is you put that list in some form of order, or in a collage or in a mandala, and then you put a word by it, okay? Hear me. I'm going to get it all out and we'll stop. What would you say most defines that relationship? First thought, best thought. My deceased father, high respect. My former lover oscillates between contempt, sadness, and fear. Can you do that with the list? Just a couple of words. Okay? A couple of words. Take your time there. Then the next category among this list is, what do you do to contribute to the relationship being the way you defined it? You know, it's unpacking the dynamic and the configuration in the mandala. What do I do, knowingly or unknowingly, to keep the relationship somewhat the way I defined it, somewhat stationary in that labeling? Most relationships can be summed up pretty much as utterly dynamic. And you would say, what do I do to keep that relationship utterly dynamic? When I see her and him, I show up with everything I've got. Point 2, okay? Then you know this is super high, intimate, transformational intimacy. You're not saying that to many people. You get down to enemy. What am I doing to contribute to enemy label? What do I do, knowingly or unknowingly, to make her, to vilify? I allow myself to go unchallenged. No, be more succinct, Alan. I don't mindfully, be more succinct. I joyously judge her. Joyously judge her, that's it. Just get down with it. You know, I joyously judge it. Okay, that's the second category. Third category. What would I like the relationship, what's the next dimension I'd like to see the relationship take? I'm not saying the ideal, the next dimension. I've got a perfectly intimate, wise relationship with my partner. It's the finest place of resonance. We've gone into therapy, we've done plant medicine, we've done ayahuasca, we've meditated, we've traveled, we've been to Ladakh, we've been to Nepal. We're now at the stage of life. I've had various things. She's my best friend. And where would you like it to go? If we can't keep evolving these things, right? Then we're stationary. We're somewhat stuck. And this is where relationships become predictable. My parents should have been divorced 3 times a year, every year of 75 years of marriage. But my dad once told me, he said, Alan, we've made it through. I'm now 74 years in marriage, 1 more year before he died. And bless this saint man's heart. He, sturdy in his 6'5"ness, still bowling every day of his life at 96, and photography and walking and gardening. But my mom, bless her beautiful heart, was confined to an inability to move in somewhat of a wheelchair. And rather than separate and hire someone, which you normally do when you go into an assisted living home, right? So culturally, my dad said, no, I will be that person. Pretty rad. My dad said, listen, the last 10 years of our life, you learn what it means to attend to your partner. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty details of the obvious. Bathing, cleaning, picking up, cleaning after. Now that we're older, I'm speaking for myself, there's so many people in my life that they themselves with their partners, or they themselves in their families with their parents, there's tremendous complexities. I hear it all the time. What a dedication to the evolution of greatness. So I'm asking here, how to take it higher? That's the third category. And the last category is, what can you do? I'm not saying what will you do. What can you do to make that third category real? And I would include here 3 realistic steps that can be done. Don't do them. That you feel are your dhammas, your dharmas, to elevate into the taking it higher label, to take the second category into a different dimension and to evolve who that individual is. And there invest Sanghang Saranang Gacchami in reverse. Dhamma. Sangha should be first, Dhamma should be second, Buddha should be third. We are relational creatures. I'm just stating the obvious here, but it's so easy to overlook this. We tend to neglect each other to empower a more charismatic, powerful central source. We usually relegate our intimacies to psychotherapy and to today culturally acceptable and empowered all the purgative medicines, as if we only overcome unrecognized individual or historical trauma, my intimacies with her or him would improve. I'm not saying right or wrong about that. This to me is the beautification of our intimate Sangha. We talk about the beautification of consciousness. The beautification of consciousness in context. It's called context dharma, at the confluence of self and other. And we bring to that confluence what you just mapped. Not my dharma, not the Buddha's dharma, your dharma. And then this last category, number 5, is you put a list of 3 things to do. I would put a list of 3 things to begin to cease doing. Yes. One of the things that I was troubled with in my upbringing was the repetitive nature that I perceived in my parents' relationship. That was disturbing to me, to see the repetition of behaviors. It scared me. It was called, I eventually saw it as a form of denial and mediocrity that really scared me. That I could do that too, or they're doing that. And I could get specific, but we already know what repetitive behaviors look like. Arguments, styles of non-resolution of conflict, even acting out physically, even ways to show disconnect to each other, slamming the chair against the table. You do this all the time, You have been doing it for 20 years now, as long as I've been. And so, things to cease. And then the last category here, the 6th category, is what in your own estimation, is the single most important state of mind to manifest 1, 2, and 3 of do, and 1, 2, and 3 of don't, or cease? What's the state of mind? Again, coming back to the SOC or the SOMs, states of consciousness. It's all about Dhamma literacy to me, not about a guru or a teaching or a book. This to me is psychological spiritual literacy. Dhamma transformational literacy on your terms. This is the creating the intimate mandala rather than worshiping these beautiful patterns of your own interiority in the context of your life. This is bringing Dhamma out of tradition into day-to-day reality. If you get that, you go like, whoa, 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 whoa. You go, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm going to do this. And guess what? This list is not definitive. I've met people in groups that I've led who've gone back to that list 20 years hence when they wrote it. They wept, called me, when are you doing another retreat? I want to go back into that list in good company of other people. I lost touch with the intimacy of what I did. The habit of 20-year cycles. We're high fidelity, intimate people. The psychedelic is not just about a heightened state of mind. It's immediacy to sensatory vibration, subtle vibration. Dhamma and Sangha are subtle frequencies. If you and I were married and you were going to die today and I'm going to die, I didn't know when, you didn't know when I was going to die. This is a hello, a goodbye. Nothing would be off the table. You know, we'd be in the high. I would probably want you to say, what do you love about me? And I'd want you to ask, well, I want to share with you what I love about you. I want to wish for you in the future. I want to meet you again next life. I want to lay it all out on the hearts. Alan, get practical. Too many drugs. You can't be doing that day to day. You don't work. No wonder you are the way you are. Well, fuck that. At this stage, those gentlemen, me, you, family, we all are in collapse. I've been diagnosed with the immediacy of a fatal illness. They tell me it's a ticking bomb any second. Don't go to Maui. There's no one there that can save your life. Intervene. I've had the best surgeons in the world, and I'm basically saying, I'm not saying no to surgery. I'm saying yes to quality. That's all. It's not a heroic decision. It just would be a defiance of 50 years of Dharma life, not to give life to Dharma cure, which means Dhamma intimacy, grow, elevate where I am over longevity. Mm-hmm. I have no idea that I won't get hit going to Makua today, or a meteorite hits us. I saw today in the New York Times this young woman, 38 years old, who was married with 2 children. Did you read that obituary? A woman from Bulgaria. I didn't ever know who she was. A philanthropist, a co-founder along with her husband of Telsa with Elon Musk. Didn't even know English, learned 5 languages, along with the native accents of each of those languages, came to New York, eventually went to Stanford Business School, an engineering degree. She was driving on her bicycle somewhere in Nevada, and a car came from the opposite direction, going the wrong way. And 2 children, a husband, a family, a network. I never heard of her. She made the New York Times obituary and go like, I can't even imagine looking down the road knowing that it's just another day in the life of the son, my children, my husband, my life. 38, young and robust, and all of it. The headlong collision of the brick wall of annihilation on a planetary level. Scientists and savants are telling us, from a human perspective, extinction that we're in, the 6th extinction, be sure it's happening. It's a slow motion event. From a cosmological point of view, it's instantaneous. I've said this so many times. I'll close, I promise. When I read Michio Kaku's book recently, for the 5th time, The Future of Humanity, the ethos of it is about the necessity of the species to help civilize its context. He talks about civilization 1, 2, and 3 types. We still can't even harness light. We're still using the very thing which I consider to be very natural, to have seen methane coming up, 1,000,000 years ago, and someone says, God, look, what is that? Oh, Jesus Christ, what is that? It burned me. It's like, and your wife says to you, hey, listen, let's carve out some rock, get some peppermint leaves and put some water in there and make tea. It's natural to use fossil fuels. Who would know that it would kill us? Urbanization, electrification. Fossil fuels are natural. It's life. But Michio Kaku is saying that 200 million years from now, which is not very long, the very sun that keeps us warm right now, that allows us to see each other, to transform our relationships, will engulf this earth. There's no way of mistaking that. It's already being done. It's baked in. Now, what perspective do you want to live on? What level of awareness do you want to embody? I don't know about you, but there's a ticking bomb in my heart. There's a ticking bomb in your heart. There's a ticking bomb in the world's heart. No. Decode that label. The evolution of consciousness. I want to participate in it. I want to be radical. The sun's going to take us all out. There'll be a great astrophysical silence here. There'll be no book contract. There'll be no memory of no memory of you. All our notebooks, all our relationships. Where did they go? I close. The last category on your list, which is so neglected. What is your visionary dream metaphor of what makes you walk and eat and get out of bed, as it said? The deepest why imaginable in your soul of pure, radical, mystical adventure. If you could dream, just like we talked about yesterday with the great astrophysicist from Italy, Giorgino Bruno, we all know about his incredible observation of the obvious. We're in an infinite paradigm of multidimensionality. Hey, Catholics. Hey, Mr. Pope. It doesn't center around your denial of sex. Killed him, burned him, cut his tongue out. Let's not be victims of orthodoxy. Let's be dreamers, right? It's not working it out on a psychotherapeutic level and purgative level alone and trying to get it out. Oh, what's happening, honey? On the news, the Earth's going to end tomorrow morning at 6. No, I've got an ayahuasca session to do. I got dead. I mean, hello. If we're not going to talk this way to each other, who are we going to talk to? Watch. David Attenborough talk about nature or the cosmos. Your existential dreamer. Where's your Giorgio Bruno? Where's your infinity? Where is your infinity, Alan? Do you want to make good on that promise? You're embodied. You do what you do well. You're a lover. You're a mother. You're a saint. You're a savant. You're an artist. You're a psychotherapist. You get down on your knees like the Dalai Lama's weeper and you help people who cannot help themselves well. But do you still dream? That's one of the greatest things to make the pain workable. When I talk to political prisoners, they never, ultimately, the ones that survived and elevated, they never gave up the dream of freedom. Freedom to think again without fear. Give yourself a freedom from fear environment and just do your metaphorical, psychedelic. I've told you yesterday, I want to be reborn with the next Buddha. I don't want to be a Buddha. But I do want to be in the company of my samsaric sangha and see these boys and girls in the company of a Buddha, whether it be real or metaphorical. I want to see the kind of energy that a Buddha talks to boys and girls. I want to become fully enlightened. I believe in the ideal of that. What does it mean? Overcoming completely delusional behaviors. I don't want to be a victim of my own stupidity. I don't want to say I'm sorry to you, gentlemen, for having harmed you or criticized you. I want to overcome my own aggression, my own unexcavated violence. I could be Xi Jinping. I could be Kim Jong-un. I could be Ming Online. I could be Adolf Hitler. I do not disavow myself from that possibility because I can't see down into my soul, my substratum sufficiently enough to say you are fully freed from delusion. So my dream is like, go wild. I want to become fully enlightened in the company of a Buddha. And I want to know what it means to live in the psychedelic high frequency of psychic powers. I am so down with looking at you and wondering, have we met? When and why and what did we do? How did I love you? How did I harm you? You said, Alan, in our lifetime, 300 years ago, this was our relationship. You and I were brothers and sisters. We lived in Nevada. And you used to steal all the things from me that I loved, but I always forgave you because you were my older brother. But I never really took it out of my marriage to the man that I loved and blamed him for never really giving me enough. It was all because of my unrecognized love of you, and you failed my projection of holding you in such high esteem, and I couldn't translate your thievery. That's just one of, wow, how many of those psychological existential knots do we trail? At the same time, who's my Devadatta out there? I have people in my life who don't like me. They're jealous. Small dick guys. Theoretically, metaphorically, in reality. But they don't have the balls to be in dialogue about topics. They want to vilify the body, the mind. One of the things I love about Daw Aung San Suu Kyi and Seda U Pandita, her teacher, my teacher, he introduced me to a concept that's been really, really at the forefront of my heart, non-vilification. If you can be mindful enough to not stay on topic, right? And I know I'm an asshole, you've said it like forever. However, what's the issue? Stay on topic. She's an embodiment of nonviolent feminine radicalism. What does she do? Let's talk about it. So this theme of the dream, it's all wrapped in how well do we communicate? So when we talk about meditation, if it doesn't translate to the intimacy of refined communication, rooted in self-honesty and conscience and dignity, we're not meditating. You can meditate and concentrate all day till the cows come home, but it's going to come down to how well do you hold your consciousness with words and energy, tonality, meaning, timing, and how well do those words reflect states of mind? So non-demonization, we're in this together. There's no ultimate obstacle except that which we bring to the forefront of our psyche. So that's sort of a bit of a overview of one thing that we used to do in retreats that I once led. On the first day, we spent 5 to 7 days with another 25 questions. And this became, and I say this to you with tremendous love and unconditional freedom, if you so choose, this is the basis of your Dhamma book. This is why I recommend don't buy Dhamma books. Write your own. Decathex. You can be inspired, of course, but tone down the dependencies on guided meditations. Even in my case, I love yoga teachers, but I do it on my own. I love psychotherapy, but I self-therapize. And so the same thing is, let this be a lifelong mapping and have a book that you have, that you can carry with you, leave it behind, that is your personal Dhamma book. I hope that's something valuable you can take away if it's valuable to you. But don't let anyone read it. Know that it's a sacred, private, and just let the company of the people that know you and love you to allow you the privacy of a sacred, sacred, holy Bible. But it's your choice to do what you want. But I would really, to sanctify the secrecies, to keep them preserved without the need to talk about them. There's a lot of things that you'll reveal to yourself. I mean, for example, on day 7 of the retreats that we would do, we had a thing called Sacred Secrets, where people, if they volunteered, would come and address the room in their own salvation and reveal, to sanctify what it is they've been terrified to ever share. I blown out after the first year. By the second, third, fourth year of this, it was not natural, but we would all weep at the grace of release from people in sharing their secrets. I know it sounds 60s and Oshoian, but it's, it's timeless, and it's beyond a particular individual. It's a very, very beautiful process. Especially around impacted fears and shame around sexuality. There's a lot of money. And it's just one of those things that... We okay?
Yes.
Okay, so there's like 15 minutes. If there's any questions at all or things that you would like to ask before we take a break for lunch, don't hesitate. I could easily elaborate just a few more seconds and minutes on this. I can't personally emphasize enough that meditation, yoga, Dhamma to me at this point is the experiential, ongoing, intimate, felt study of states of consciousness. It's the revolution of consciousness. Taking it out of that poetic, the felt experiential texture of states of... When people are more fluent with love, they know the difference between love and greed. They know the texture of freedom versus the continuity of an agreed upon attachment. So you can get very nuanced. I said yesterday, but I'll say it again for the benefit of the people here for the first time, is that in circles where I've lived in Burma, Kalyanamitas or teachers would often ask you, when you ask a question, what do you mean by that? And so one could even say that this list, this mapping, this mandala that you're making is about states of mind, is also the study of language. It's not conceptual. We are who we are based upon often what we think. And we often don't recognize that there are deeper, more medium stratum levels of narration, stories, and thoughts than just the outside cognitive edge of consciousness. Random judgments and predictions and directions and events. Then there's more dreamlike states and narratives and language that we hold. The study of language is the study of emotionality. You can say a beautifully loving, hateful word and unrecognized that it's motivated by hate rather than love. Passive aggressive. We all know what it means to be around an asshole who says, I love you. You're unaware. Do you realize, George, you're unaware of what you're saying? You don't really understand me, do you, baby? Unfortunately, I understand you better than you fucking understand yourself, asshole. It's all about mind states. I don't have a self-responsible, courageous feel for who I am because I'm undignified. I want to blame you and repeat blame to feel good about myself. Study of states of mind, and not psychologies particularly. Dhamma literacy is the study of language and energy. I dare use the word energy on Maui. But when we're on medium doses of the psilocybin, the MEO, the DMT, you go, invisible states of consciousness are so felt. You know how when you feel embodied and you're just trusting the emotionality of your embodiment, you can't quite feel what I'm trusting in myself, but it's really kind of an uneasy, necessary anxiety, coming to terms with something more truthful? Look at all the words that I use for that process. Do we have mindful presence with that evolution so we can more consciously create it in ourselves. Isn't that strength and spiritual power? We want to learn how to consciously intuit information. We do a yoga asana in alignment to a form, cognitive alignment, infidelity to the state, and to the constellation of chosen states. I'm sorry to be so emphatic about it, but I do this for emphasis for my own growth. Chosen. One of the things in monasteries and meditation and yoga, choosing your state of mind. Not waffling, wavering. How many people we know we've lost alignment with who betrayed the fidelity of the friendship? They lost the GPS of solidarity, continuity, and trusting us to be the place to talk of the struggle. And we heard from a third party what they said about us. They betrayed the fidelity of trust, right? It's worse than hitting them or spitting on them to hear that. Long-term intimacies are broken by the tongue. Communication, words, language, right? Learning how to speak and write and dress and hold these foundational points of our masculinity and our femininity are huge. Dhamma literacy. Within that, may I encourage you to encourage me, to encourage our friends. Let's learn more to become uncontrived in our risk-taking experimental behaviors. We're all on the stage of improvisational comedy and terror. You know, part of the struggle is that we live in agreed upon, semi-agreed upon forms of conformity. And, you know, you play into puppeting, although we're doing, you know, yet again another 2-hour session of Iyengar. And I've done some ayahuasca on the side, and I'm still in contortion with my unrecognized puppeteer, hoping to please you enough to get something out of you that I can't give myself. And all of a sudden I find myself being mindful, unmindful of my own contortions. Authenticity cannot be stressed enough. What does it mean? Break the rules of your own conformity. Okay? Masturbate with your left hand, not your right hand. Tell your sex worker, I'm madly in love with her. Will you marry me? No, you're just a client, dude. Do you have a sister? Work your way around the corner. Get what you want. Get what you want. Believe in your appetite, right? What's the point? The cemeteries are going to be unmarked. So that type of uncontrived authenticity, we have to trust each other and support each other to come a little bit more natural, to be who we are. Dare to say, you know, you're amazingly beautiful, Karen. Amazingly skilled. What can I do to love you and to support you? Don't even ask. Just do. The days of asking are over. They're over. They're over. We have to stop being in formality. People ask me, what can I do for you, Alan? Get your paper out.
What you do.
Get your paper out. I've got a PayPal account. It takes minimum of 5-figure donations. How's that? No, I wasn't talking about that, greedy. Well, how about you selling your house then? Give me 6 figures. I'm sorry I asked you. I meant like, do you want a papaya? Do you know? I mean, I don't know. Just, if all the world were asked, what do you want? What would we give ourselves and each other, you know? The legacy of inheritance is going to be lost in the sediment belt of greed and astrophysical extinction. There's not going to be any trace of anything we've ever done except in the karmic belt, if there is such a thing. So another way of talking about I mean, many years ago, I was a very adept, bored spiritual teacher. I mean, and then I was in Burma and met a spoken word artist who left prison after 6 years of hard labor for speaking the truth in a very mildly satirical comedy act about the dictator, and was put in prison for that. And I met him the day after he was released with the Aung San Suu Kyi with other people. And he, upon his first day of release, he came to her compound upon invitation. And a friend of mine who translated said that this is Burma's Jim Carrey, Robin Williams. And he said he was in prison, and the audience was just taken aback that they saw him free. And he told the audience that for 6 years he had been pounding rocks because of his last performance. And that for 6 years, which really stuck in my mind, I've recently read about it, he said, for 6 years I thought about this moment now. It really, that was the first wedge between me and being present that I've ever had. I always heard about the now being the Waikiki beach of Eastern philosophy. Everything reverts right back to the now. And he's saying in an audience, for 6 years I've wanted to be somewhere other than where I was. Okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was pounding rocks because I was forced to do that in chains. I didn't do it well. I did it with a heavy heart. But the whole time, what kept me alive? Just like Nelson Mandela, when I read his book in '95, Long Walk to Freedom, there wasn't a day, there wasn't a day that I did not think of my freedom and the freedom of my people. So much for being present, right? In breath, out breath. Fuck you, man. There's a war here. Step up. And he said, for 6 years I've been waiting for this moment to perform again. Then he said, as it was told to me, and I've said this numerous times, but it just never gets old, I know what I'm about to do here will land me in prison. And he did a big fuck you. He said, so be it. Freedom is more important than fear. And there's something in that heroic, radical, epic, archetypal embodiment of grace under pressure, courage under extreme suffering, the prediction of extreme consequences for being true and real. It's relatively safe where we are. And yet the agreement of conformity to break the rules, don't go too far out of the, leave your spiritual correctness up here in Kula. Incorrectness. And so he performed for about an hour and a half, and the day after I was told he was rearrested and given another lengthy prison term in a labor camp in the north, in chains, pounding rocks. Now, I've met him after his second incarceration and interviewed him and his brothers, and he is a featured interviewee in the books that I did with my colleague Fergus Harlow called Burma's Voices of Freedom. These are incredible Dharma teachings. And I've asked him a lot about his life in prison and comedy and the role of satire and dictatorship. And I asked him about his life pounding rocks for having acted in conscience to have the courage to do things larger than your own self-interest, to quote Aung San Suu Kyi. He said, what got me through was I never lost the edge of my own comedic satire. Even though we were starving and dying and living with the rats and the centipedes and the vermin and the bed bugs and the food that dogs couldn't even eat, he looked at me, and I have it on camera. He's a classic one. They all say this that make it through. They can imprison your body, Alan, but they can't imprison your mind. They can try to steal your tongue, but you can still talk to yourself. Think of that kind of really rooted, radical courage. And I wish I knew there was an easy road for that, right? But courage becomes great based upon the evolutional confidence of enacting courageously. It's an evolutional expression, especially under pressure. So we go, okay, the darkness is dark, but good boys and girls who we don't know or often get celebrated by the Nobel Peace Prize, but how many millions of unrecognized savants, activists, artists that are so rad, ou parlez. Burma's preeminent spoken word artist, gone. You can imprison your mind, your body, but they can't imprison your mind. And even so, regardless, you keep hope alive through little daily actions of smuggling in words. I've met people who had words smuggled in on the paper wrap to hold a cigar together. And they would take it off and they would see a few letters and one word. And he now is the chief editor of the largest, most reputable magazine online and in real time for Burma in the world. Chezwa Jaw, a graduate of Berkeley School of Journalism. He learned English that way in prison. He's in the books. These are incredibly epic, challenging circumstances, right? I'm not trying to draw comparisons, but trying to offer hope to my own life, especially my own personal challenge. So from my heart to yours, we're going to take a lunch break. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your presence. If there are questions during this hour, please jot them down. You can tell Karen to save a little bit of time. We have 2 hours in the afternoon from 1 until 3. And those of you who are online, I hope you join and bring your friends. From my heart to yours, thank you for tuning in. See you at 1 o'clock here from Hawaii. Thank you.